Hi guys, welcome back to iFashi. Today's tutorial will be teaching us how to draft and sew this beautiful short. It's a two-piece vintage shirt and shorts. We've already posted the cutting and the sewing of the shirt, and this video is for the drafting and the sewing of the short. So let's get started. The first thing I'll do on my pattern paper is to draw out my starting point, which is the first line on the side of my paper, because I want to leave out some space at the beginning of my paper. Then I also drew another line on top of my paper. You can take 1 or 2 inches at the top of your pattern paper. So from that line will serve as our waistline, and from that line we'll be taking all our measurements downwards. So the first measurement we are going to take from the waist down is our crotch length. The crotch length I'm using here is 11 inches. How did I get 11 inches? The basic method I use that works for me all the time is to divide my hip measurement by 4 to get my crotch length. Now I've taken my crotch length and I ruled out the line and I labeled it crotch length. From this crotch length, we are going to go up with 2 inches. This is standard. Go up with 2 inches from your crotch length to get your hip line. So after getting that hip line, we'll draw it out and label it hip line. After the hip line, the next thing we're going to take is the length of the short. This totally depends on how long you want the short to be. I used 16 inches for this drafting, but when I was about sewing, I realized it was even too long for what I wanted to make. So go ahead and take your measurements and take the exact point you want the short to stop. So I'm drafting on 16 inches. I added 2 inches after 16 inches for my folding allowance. If you're using a fabric that you need to fold in on the down part, you have to take your folding allowance when you're drafting. So after taking the full length of the shorts and the folding allowance of the shorts, we have all our lines out. The next thing we will do now is to start taking our measurements on these lines. The first measurement we will be imputing on these lines is our hip measurement divided by 4, and we will put this hip measurement on the crotch line, on the hip line, and on the waist line. Just watch what I'm doing on your screen. Crotch line, hip line, and waistline, you put your hip measurement divided by 4 on those points, and then you connect all together with a straight ruler. After connecting them, this line is where we will be taking our measurements inward from, which will serve as our center front. You know, when we're drafting a skirt, the beginning of the paper is the center front, but for short and pant, this other side is the center front. Now the next thing we will do is to extend our crotch and hip line, because we are not done there. So after extending the crotch and hip line, we'll go back to the waist line and take our waist measurement divided by 4. My waist is 32 divided by 4 will give you 8 inches. So I'm imputing 8 inches on my waistline. I'll add 1 inch for seam allowance. I also add 1 inch for dart allowance, because we'll have a dart on this short. So after adding those allowances, slant what you have there to meet up with our hip line, as you see me doing on your screen. At the end of your measurements and allowances, slant it to meet up with the hip line and label it the center front and the side front. I said it earlier, this part is the center front, while the beginning of the paper is the side front. After that, the next thing we are going to do now is to take our dart. Remember, we added 1 inch for dart allowance, so we need to take this dart. For front dart, you go in by 4 inches from the center front and go down by 4 inches. Then that 1 inch that we took for the dart allowance, we'll share it into 2. Put 0.5 on one side and 0.5 on the other side, and that will be our dart for the front. Now let's go back to the crotch line and do our crotch extension. Now to get our crotch extension, we're going to go to the crotch line and divide our hip measurement by 20 for front. For back, you divide by 10, but now we're drafting front. So divide 44 by 20, it will give you 2.2 inches. So I'm going to impute that 2.2 inches on the crotch line and go to the hip line and come out by 0.5. So this measurement, we are taking it from this straight line. So take 2.2 inches from this straight line on the crotch line, and on the hip line, take 0.5, and then use your curve ruler to connect it together. After that, we're going to go to the full length of this short. You know, this short is a very short one, so it's around our thigh. So we're going to measure your thigh all around and divide what you have by 2 and put it on the length line and also on the folding allowance. After putting all of these measurements, you connect it to meet up with your crotch extension, and that is that for that part. Very, very simple. Put all this method, keep them in your mind. It helps with all the squeezes that you have on the front of your trouser. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to add a zipper allowance to this short. On the side front, I'll add 1-inch zipper allowance to this short. If you use 1.5 or 2 inches, that totally depends on you, but 1-inch allowance is just fine for me to fix my zipper. So I'll add that zipper allowance on the side front, and after that I'll mark it out and label it zipper allowance. The next thing I'm going to do now is to give my waistline a little slant. This slant helps with our band fitting. So I'm going to go to the center front and come down by 0.5, go to the side front and go up by 0.5 and connect those two lines together using my straight ruler. So after doing this, our waist is out. This is the new waistline that we're using for this short. Now connect it to meet up with your zipper allowance. So the next thing I'm going to take now is my band. Remember, we're supposed to take our band before taking our darts. The dart comes after the band, don't forget that. So now I'm going to come down by 1.5 inch. You can, if you want a 2 inches band, you can come down by 2 inches from the waistline downwards to get your band. So I'm taking 1.5 inch because I don't want my band to be too wide. So my band is out, the zipper allowance is out. Here's our center front and side front. We've taken our crotch extension and all our measurements for the front, and we're done with the front drafting of this short. It is very, very simple. The next thing we're going to do now is to draft out the back. For me to draft out the back, the first thing I'm going to do is to trace out this front measurement on top of the paper that I'll be drafting my back on. If you don't have a tracing wheel, you can go ahead and just take this measurement again. Everything you did for this front, repeat it for the back. Tracing wheel makes it simple for me. I'll just trace out all these measurements I have for the front on top of the pattern paper that I'll be drafting the back on. Now when you're tracing, remember to leave some space at the beginning of your paper and the top of your paper. You'll need that later. So after tracing it out, I'll remove this front piece. Remember to label your front piece so that you will not get confused. After tracing it out, I'll label this front, remove the front piece, use a pencil to highlight all these things I traced out. I'll use a pencil so that we don't have too much marks on the paper to confuse us. So I would label it now, remove it, use a pencil to mark out the lines I just traced before I'll use a red marker to draft out the back pattern of this short. Now here is the front that we just marked out on top of the pattern we're using for the back. Now here is the red marker I'll be using to draft out this back. So the first thing we're going to do on this straight line, we are going to come in by 1 inch on the hip line, and then we'll go to the waistline and go in by 2 inches. The straight line for the back and front is not the same. So we're going in on the crotch line, on the crotch line by 1 inch, and on the waistline by 2 inches. And on top of that waistline, you go up by another 2 inches because the back is higher than the front. Now, we went up by 2 inches on the center front. On the side front, we'll go up by 0.5. On the side front, 0.5. Before we connect this waist, we need to take our waist measurement for the front. For front, our waist measurement is 10, as you can see on the screen. That is 8 plus the 2 inches seam allowance and that. So we're going to repeat that 10 for this back as well. Mark out 10 inches. On that point where the 10 inches end, we are not slanting it direct. Go up by 0.5. It is that 0.5 that you will now slant this 2 inches where we wrote this back, that you now slant it to. So I'll take my tape and mark 0.5 on that point, the side front, and connect the waist down to that 0.5. This means that on the waistline, we went up by 0.5 on the side front and 2 inches on the center front. You're taking this from the front that we marked out with pencil. The next thing we're going to do is to go to our crotch line and do the crotch extension for the back. Remember, I said divide your hip measurements by 20 for front and 10 for back. So front gave us 2.2, back will give us 4.4. 44 divided by 10, 4.4. So I put that 4.4 on the crotch line, starting from this red line that we marked out. I came out by 4.4, and on the hip line, I went out by the same 0.5 that we did for front. So, and I used my slight curve ruler to mark that curve there. So we have our crotch extension for the back out already. Now I'm going to label all these lines and refresh your memory a bit. I'll label this crotch line, the hip line, all these lines, we got them from the front pattern. Remember, the waistline, the full length, and the folding allowance. And then how did we get the back? We've drawn only 3 lines for the back: the crotch extension, the waistline, and the new red line. This new red line, how did we get it? Remember, we came in by 1 inch from the front pattern on the crotch line and came in by 2 inches on the waistline, and then we went up by 0.5 for the side front and went up by 2 inches for the center front. So the next thing we're going to do now is to take our hip measurement on both the hip line and the crotch line for the back. So as you're taking this measurement, you're starting from this straight red line that we marked out first. Place your tape on the straight red line inwards and get your hip measurement, and after that you mark it out at the side front. The next thing we'll do is to take our dart for the back. Remember, I took our dart for front, so now it's time to take the dart for back. For back dart, we're coming in by 4 inches and going down by 5 inches. Back dart is longer than front. So we'll divide the dart allowance that we took on this line, and then we'll have our dart for the back. Remember, like I said earlier, you're supposed to mark out your waistband before your dart. So remember that when you're sewing. I came down by 1.5 like I did for front to get my waistband, and now we have our back waistband out already. The only remaining part now is to finish up the down part of this short. So now the first thing we're going to do about that is to add 0.5 inches to the front measurement. You can use 1 inch, depends if you want it to be very big. If you want it to be big, you can use 1 inch. Come out by 1 inch or 0.5 on the sides of your front measurement. That's why we used pencil to mark out what we had for the front on top of the back pattern paper. So now I just went out by 0.5 because I don't want it to be too big. I want it a little bit fitted on my thighs. That's why I use 0.5. After that, I'll connect my lines together and my short is ready. Can decide to trace it out on another paper and keep this pattern for future purpose. You can decide to cut directly on this pattern. It's completely your choice. So the remaining thing for this back is our side zip. Remember, we have a side zipper allowance for the front piece, so I'm going to add it to the back piece as well. If the space you left at the beginning of your pattern paper is not enough, you can go ahead and join paper. Use pin or a sellotape to join your paper at the beginning of your paper so that you can get your zipper allowance on the side. That's why it's good to come inwards from the beginning of your paper before you start drafting, because of this kind of allowance. So now we're going to add zipper allowance to the back. The same measurement you used for the front, add it to the back. Join paper if your paper is not enough, so that you will have the same measurement for both front and back. So guys, we have our back piece and we have our front piece ready. The next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cut it out and use it to cut out my fabric. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask us in the comment section. I'll be waiting to answer. I hope you understand so far. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, remember to subscribe, like and share this video because it will be very useful to others out there. Here is the fabric that I'll be using. It's a chantilly lace fabric. I'm going to go ahead and iron it on top of a duchess to make it firm. I like the vintage vibe that comes with chantilly. That's why I decided to use a chantilly for this two-piece project. So I'll just go ahead and cut it out now behind the camera so that I don't waste your time. So just place your pattern paper on top of your fabric and cut. So now while I was cutting, I fold in my band allowance because we're going to have a separate band, cut out our band separately for this short. I fold in my band allowance and also folded in the down parts because I said it earlier, it was too long. So we have our short cut out already. The first thing I'm going to do for the sewing part of this short is to go ahead and close the two center front and center back together. This curved part is our center front and center back. So I'm going to stitch it in the machine and come back to show you guys. After stitching that center front and center back, this is what we have. I've gone ahead to stitch it. The next thing I'm going to do now is to place the two good sides of this short facing each other. So I'll place the front on the table like this and place the back on top facing each other like this. The next thing is to close one side down, not the zipper allowance side, the other side. But before that, we need to take our dart. We've not taken our dart. Remember I said the dart starts after the waistband. We've not cut the waistband. So now I'm going to take my dart on this short. Remember the front dart is 4 inches inwards from the center front and 4 inches downwards from that point. So and for the back, 4 inches inward from the center back and 5 inches downward. So I'm going to use my chalk to mark that out on my fabric, on the wrong side of my fabric, so that when I'm sewing it on the machine, I'll know exactly where I'm stitching on top. So I'll use my chalk now to mark out these darts and I'll go to the sewing machine and hold my dart and I'll be right back to show you guys. Now this is what we have after holding our dart. We've gone ahead to hold the dart. Remember you added 1 inch dart, so when you're holding, hold 1 inch. So now the next thing we're going to do is to place the two good sides facing each other now that the dart is being held already. And then after facing the two good sides to each other, we will go ahead and close down one side, not the side that has the zipper allowance. Remember our zipper allowance is on one side. So we'll hold on for the zipper allowance first and close down one side. After closing down one side, so we are closing down the first side so that we'll be able to fix our waistband. It is after fixing our waistband that we will now go ahead and fix our zipper. So I'm going to close down this side and I'll be right back to show you guys. Now I've closed down one side of the short. This is what it looks like, and I've gone ahead to cut our waistband. We have two waistbands on the table. One is longer than the other. The longer one will go to the back and this shorter one will go to the front. This short one is the exact front waist. I measured what I have on my front and I cut it out on my band. Then the back band, the reason I made it longer is because I'll be adding this elastic waistband. I want the back to have elastic and the front will not have elastic. That's because I don't like the squeeze effect that elastic adds on a trouser or a short. So I want only the back to have elastic while the front is straight. That's why we need this zipper on the side so that we'll be able to wear it. Now let me teach you how I'm going to turn this band. I'm going to put elastic on the back band, and after putting elastic on the back band, I'll use the front to turn it. So this is what we have. I fixed the elastic. We have a video of how to add elastic to your waistband on the channel if you don't know how to do that. So I used this front band to turn this back band so that you would not see any sewing on the side. So the point at which I turned the back and front bands together is the point that will be on the sides that we have joined on our short, so that the two seams we align, the seam on the band and the seam on the short. So from that point, I'll sew the elastic band backwards and the straight one forward. This is what I have after that. I've attached the band to the short. Remember, I've still not closed one side. Now we're going to close the second side and fix our zipper. Just take your measurements, 9 inches, stop at 9 inches and fix your zipper from the upper on the upper part. After that, we'll close our crotch. The crotch is still open. So place the front on top of the back, making sure the seam on the crotch is aligned, and then you stitch it. Stitch the crotch, fix your zip, and that's that for this short. Very, very simple. Here's the result of what we made, guys. This is how it looks at the back, and this is the zipper that we fixed on the side. This short is very neat and beautiful. I like the fact that I used this chantilly for this project. It's very, very chic. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done that already, and let us know in the comment section whatever you want us to do next or whatever you don't understand. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye for now.